What native speakerism is and how relevant it is in today's Colombian English classes. We will be discussing this with an expert in the field, and we'll also be talking to students and teachers about their opinions. So Mark, thank you very much for allowing us to interview you. It means a lot for us. We are carrying out research on native speakerism at the moment, and we'd like to hear some of your thoughts with regard to this topic. So first of all, what do you think about native speakerism, and why are you against it?
I think against it is a strong response. I think there's an argument for everything, and every context is different. I think there's definitely a move away from native speakerism. I think there's a greater validity, a greater understanding of the L1, previously known as a deficit in terms of its negative impact on second language acquisition. I think today what we see is a shift away from the overdependence on native speakerism as being the only way, the benchmark, the broche oro that we're all looking for.
Yeah.
Rather than today, there's a wider understanding that more people who are English speakers in the world are not native speakers themselves, and therefore, in actual fact, it's an unrealistic aim to head for.
Yeah, but on the other hand, how realistic is the shift towards the decentralization of the language if at the end of the day one has to sit standard English tests that were made by inner circle countries like England, the United States, such as the TOEFL, the
IELTS.
The IELTS, yes. So at the end of the day, don't we always have to do that?
I think that's some of the shift that we were discussing this morning. There is, of course, and always will be, a firm following of there being strict outlines to what needs to be covered in language instruction, not least of all because it's easier then to ensure everybody learns at least the same content, but also it's easier then to test if those structures are easily identifiable. I think what we're seeing though is a more sociolinguistic shift towards the understanding that context is key, and to understand the individual is not to understand what they say but the context in which they're saying it, which is why I think this shift from native speakerism to a more multilingual understanding of the use of language and its adaptability and future use has been so timely. I think it's overdue. I know there are issues regarding how native speaker teachers are treated, certainly in the Colombian educational system. I've had experience with that myself, knowing full well that being a native speaker, I would be offered preferential availability of hours, preferential remuneration packages.
Yes, that's what I'd like to ask you about that. So can you explain the shift on non-native English teachers as being better paid equally with regards to the English native speakers?
I mean, I can't speak for every school, but I can certainly answer to the fact that I know that, and I'm aware of the fact that this was more prevalent probably over a decade and a half ago than it is today. I think there's definitely manifestos for non-native speakers to be involved in language instruction, simply because, as I say, the understanding is you're in a better position if you as the teacher have a greater awareness of these sorts of obstacles your students will face when fronting the language. I think this therefore brings greater benefit to the classroom, to the learner, to the context, and ultimately to the teacher.
I think that this preferential treatment that foreigners are getting is a way to entice them to coming into a country known to be a bit dangerous.
I certainly couldn't speak for anybody who has been paid what sounds like danger money for working in Colombia. What I would say is that it was certainly the attitude early on in my experience as an ELT practitioner that being native speaker carried greater weight, with or without the qualifications of non-native speaker colleagues.
Okay. Well, Mark, you've been tremendously helpful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much
for having me.
Well, let's go now for the questions to the students.
Who do you consider a native teacher? What would be your definition of a native teacher?
Well, I think native teacher is like someone who was born in in any country, and he or she flies to another and teach to that people his or her language.
Okay, so it wouldn't be a person born here in Colombia; it'd be someone from outside.
Yeah.
Right? Great. Do you think that a Colombian can reach the level of English the same as a native speaker?
Yeah, I think the only difference I think it would have is like the native teacher has more idioms or more like ways to teach it. I mean, the idioms that a native teacher has will be more like accurate in the country.
Right. And from your experience, who do you think was best, the native teacher or the local teacher?
In my opinion, I think the local teacher, because he or she can help you with problems or some troubles you could have, but it can help you with your language. I mean, a native teacher will have the problem that he or she doesn't understand at all the language of the country he has come.
Okay, and here in Colombia, who do you think gets paid more, the local teacher or the native teacher?
Unfortunately, I think the native teacher.
Okay, and why do you think schools in Colombia hire foreign teachers of English?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, why do you think in Colombia, why do you think they hire foreigners to teach English here in Colombia?
I think it's more. I think that's a status thing. I mean, it's like if a school or a college told you like we have native teachers, you can say, "Wow, native teachers." But I mean, a local teacher can do it, and a local teacher could help you even more than a native teacher.
And finally, what type of English do you think is better to learn? American English, British English, Australian, or any type?
I think probably the best option to start learning is like the American English.
Who do you consider a native English speaker?
People who were born with that language, like it's their first speaking language.
Do you think that a Colombian can reach the level of English of a native speaker?
I think maybe it would be possible if that person lives or it's surrounded just by native speakers, because some idioms or specific words or the way they talk, it would be eventually like adapted to the person who is learning the language.
Are your classes, or have your classes been taught by a native teacher of English, or a local teacher of English? Or both?
Both. At school, I had just native speakers, but when I was little, they were from here. They were Colombian too. But when I grew up, they were just native.
Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to analyze some of the results from a survey that we conducted to a number of teachers whose ages ranged between 24 to 40 years old, and some of whom are our own classmates. So one of the first questions was what is, what is a native person? Some of the answers were very interesting. One of them said that a person is a native person if he or she was brought up in a country whose first language is English or Spanish. Someone else said that it's a person who acquired a language naturally. Furthermore, another answer was it's a person who teaches in his first language. And finally, we had another one said that it was a person who was born and raised in a native English-speaking country. This leads us to believe that the general consensus is that in order to be a native speaker or native teacher, you have to have been brought up in a country whose first language is English, and or that you acquired it naturally, and that you are in a position to teach it because teach it as your first language. Now, with regards to whether or not a Colombian can reach a native speaker status, or because of the level of competence, 54% said it was possible, and 36.4% said it was not possible. So the general consensus here is that, although there's a chance that a Colombian can be a native, the understanding is that no, in order to be a native speaker, you must have first acquired it in your country of origin. They were also asked about their experience as learners. So they were asked if they had classes with a native teacher or with a local Colombian teacher, or both. 81.8% said both. They had both native and local English teachers. And interestingly enough, they said that 90.8% of the local teachers were better. So let me rephrase that. 90.8% of those who were in the survey believed that local English teachers were better than the native ones. And what I understood from that is that they believe that because a local teacher is bilingual, he or she is in more position to put him or herself into the shoes of the learner and thus be able to explain English better, sometimes using the first language. So that's what, I found that very interesting. 90.9% of those who were surveyed believe that native teachers got paid more, which sadly is a reality. The reason why they get hired here in Colombia is because of this misconception, from the understanding that I got from the survey, is that they offer more of a corporate status to schools who hire them. They also believed that native teachers simply perform better. And others said that it's the school directors hired them because they believed they were better prepared.
And in this way, we have reached the end of our presentation. We would like to thank Dr. Carl and colleagues for this awesome ride and awesome class of language globalization. Until the next time.